Winter Roses, Summer by fairytalelovr, Chapter 29, Connections. Ella watched impatiently as Mr. Walken examined Sansa. She had allowed the girls, and herself, to sleep in a bit that morning, and had dragged her eldest stepdaughter to the infirmary as soon as they were done with breakfast.
"I don't see anything wrong from the outside," the maester said with a frown. "You say you only feel this when you're asleep?" Sansa nodded. "For how long?"
"We were 3 days from landing, I think. I had a weird dream. I don't remember much of it, but I know it looked like I was in the middle of the woods, and suddenly there were loud voices. Then I woke up." "She woke up yelling," Ella said. "She was still a bit incoherent when I got to her cabin, but she said she felt like she had been shot in the shoulder, and I thought it was only an impressive dream, that she'd shake it off by morning. But every night since then it's the same thing. She has night terrors and feels that pain."
"So the pain is connected to the night terrors, not her body properly," the maester conjectured. "I can give you something to sleep, but I don't know what else will do."
"Sleeping potions are addictive," Ella protested. "I don't think that's a good idea." The maester hummed.
"You can try to have some soothing tea before bed, and if that doesn't help any, we can try only 1 drop of the potion. Should be enough without being too addictive."
"Thank you, maester," Ella said, although displeased.
"I think I have some valerian roots in here," the maester said, turning to a cupboard. "At the very least I have lavender."
There was a sudden knock on the door, which was opened before anyone had a chance to react, and Ned walked in, a frown on his face.
"What is this? What is happening?"
He looked at Sansa, who was sitting on the cot.
"Darling, are you ill?"
The girl shook her head and blushed, looking down. Ned looked up at Ella. "She had some night terrors," the woman explained softly. "Which is nothing to be ashamed of," she said when Sansa blushed even deeper.
"No, of course not,"
Ned agreed, but he set a hand on Sansa's shoulder, making her cry out. "The night terrors are making her feel some pain in her shoulder," Ella clarified. Ned's frown deepened.
"What is being done for it? A sleeping potion?"
Ella glared at him. "Most certainly not. Those are highly addictive. We'll only go there as a last resort." Ned nodded, watching as Maester Walken gave Ella some roots and dried leaves, asking them to come back if Sansa got worse or didn't get any better. The girl stood up and reached for her stepmother, who drew her into a hug as they walked out of the room. "Do you want to sneak a nap before we need to get ready for the jewelry show?" Ella asked. Sansa shook her head. "I slept better last night. Aunt Ina said she would show me new stitching she's making. May I go?" "Of course, darling. I'll come and check on you when it's time to go." Sansa smiled softly and walked away.
"I want to talk to you,"
Ned said as they both were alone, leading away from the bedchambers.
"Both girls were sleeping with you last night. Is Arya well?"
Ella nodded. "It's the weirdest thing, Ned. Sansa dreams she's been shot in the shoulder, and she is feeling the pain connected to it. Then Arya, unknowing about it, had the same dream about Sansa having been shot. There is something happening. Something magical."
"You can't believe in magic. The Citadel says—"
Ned started, and Ella threw him an unamused look. "Here, maybe, but the Citadel quenches all possibility of magic. Westeros hasn't seen proper magic since the last Targaryen dragon died. But Essos is a different thing. They have warlocks everywhere, and some argue that the red priests and priestesses get their visions in the flames through magic. But they didn't get into any contact of anything magical. So why is this happening?" Ned sighed.
"I don't know. I just want them to be well."
"They will," Ella reassured. "She already slept better last night. Whatever it is, it's going to get better."
Ned smiled. "Are you trying to convince me or yourself?"
"Both, I suppose." She sighed. "About last night, I want to apologize. I was frustrated, and I snapped at you. I shouldn't have—"
"Ashara,"
he called softly, raising her chin so she'd look at him.
We never had time to mourn her. We never had time to discuss it either. I miss her too, even if I never... All I know is what you told me afterwards. I can't imagine what it must have been like for you to carry her."
Liara, she whispered. I named her Liara. I thought you were dealing with enough grief to know it back then. Ned felt his eyes fill with tears that were promptly shed.
Even when I had betrayed my word to you, you would honour me so?
You did what you had to do. I might have cursed a bit when I heard. Well, a lot. My brother was worried I would be sick from all the yelling, actually. But once I calmed down, there was only sadness and sympathy left. You had just lost most of your family. I couldn't hold for following your duty against you. His tears came more fiercely, and he hugged her tighter. Jon and Daenerys were walking around the room with an easy smile, greeting everyone in attendance. The master jeweller was proudly talking about his pieces to anyone who was asking, and his 2 apprentices were running around noting the orders. The winter diamond was the gem with the highest amount of requests, reason why they decided to make only a small number of pieces. With a purple dress on, Dany was wearing amethysts today, making her eyes pop beautifully. She stopped to talk with Marjorie, so Jon continued walking around alone.
Robb joined him, anxiously looking around to check he wasn't being overheard. You think I should make a gift to my betrothed?
Jon smiled.
Gods, you're hopeless. I'm only wondering about etiquette.
Aye, I'm sure,
Jon said sarcastically. Did you ask her, though? Robb blushed. He said it should be my decision, and that I should be the one to choose what I wish to gift her.
Come on, brother. I think I have something you might like. Jon led the way to the display across the room.
Here, these are more informal, more for day-to-day use. Oh, aye, that's probably best. First pressure.
Jon laughed.
You know, I remember a time when you were mocking me about your conquests while I was... How did Theon put it? Oh, I kept myself pure and untouched for my betrothed.
Robb had the decency of blushing.
Fine, I get the difference now, all right? Fucking is different from courting.
Jon turned serious.
Robb, don't have bastards. You can't know what it's like. No child deserves that. And you don't want you or your child to suffer your wife's reaction.
Robb fingered one of the necklaces.
No. I wouldn't want that disappointment.
Silence fell over them, stifling. So Jon was very relieved and glad for the distraction when Lord Royce came up to them to start talking.
This was a genius idea, my dear lady wife,
Jon whispered in Daenerys' ear about an hour later, after he'd seen the list of orders from the jeweller. She smiled brilliantly. Why, thank you, my sweet lord husband. Does this mean...
Jon rolled his eyes. We'll talk to Sam, remember?
He chuckled as she pouted. Their attention was drawn to the middle of the room, when suddenly Lady Olenna and Prince Oberyn had broken into a battle of wits over the purchase of one necklace.
I don't think it was wise to have those two in the same room, Jon muttered under his breath.
Dany chuckled. Let them make their bids. The highest offer takes the necklace. That'll be awful for their egos, but great for our coffers.
Jon laughed. Lady Starling, how devious. What do you call this behaviour?
Politics, Lord Starling. Exploring opportunities that will lead to other opportunities for the betterment of everyone. Jon chuckled and kissed the back of her hand before they tried to defuse the situation. Bran was so excited he was shaking in his chair, and Summer was looking at his companion with something akin to curiosity. Though every day Maester Walken came and they did some exercises, the boy couldn't yet stand on his own, so he was still reliant on the wheeled chair. Jon had cleared a place on one side of the training ground so his little brother could have an unimpeded view of the sparring match, knowing how much Bran admired the knights and Sir Barristan. Uncle Benjen and Isla had been the first to arrive, and were standing next to Bran, and the woman placed a blanket over Bran's legs. Some of the shaking went away. Soon after that, Ned came, looking sad but with a smile on his face. Ella and Sansa came with him, and Arya had appeared then, her dress untidy and her braid partly undone. "Arya!" Ella censored in a quiet voice. "What did we talk about our appointments and our appearance in public? I had already seen most of the jewels with Jon the other day. I didn't want to go." "And what is the rule?" Ella insisted. Arya rolled her eyes. I have to tell you so you won't worry. Ella tapped her shoulders lightly, forcing her to stand up straight. You broke the rule, and now you're being rude. You never roll your eyes at an adult. You are a proper young lady, not some street child. Use your manners. I'm sorry, Ella, but the horse threw a shoe. Oh, the poor horse. At least it'll have time to recuperate, since you won't be riding tomorrow. But Ella, Arya whined. Ella merely raised an eyebrow as she tried to fix the girl's hair, while Rob and Marjorie joined them, Theon trailing behind. Sir Barristan came to the training yard then, stopping to talk to some of the knights across from where they were. The crowd was thick, as almost everyone in the island was in attendance, making the yard seem almost claustrophobically filled. A few moments later, Jon and Sam joined them.
Aunt Isla, Jon called. You wouldn't happen to know where my lady wife is and what she is plotting, would you?
She chuckled. Oh, my dearest nephew. Why ever would you think that? Jon only rolled his eyes, and his question was soon answered when Daenerys came into the yard. Ghost and Grey Wind were flanking her, clearly in guard position, and at least 4 guards led by Rhaelys and Orys came behind her, as she brought Lyanna in her arms. The child was wearing a velvet dress, blue as frost, and had a small sash of grey silk wrapped around her little head, lost amidst her dark brown curls, with a single dot of a winter diamond adorning it, and a silver rose brooch on her chest. She came to wish her papa luck, Daenerys said as she came up to their family, making Jon smile and reach for their daughter. Across the training yard, people were smiling, and some ladies were sighing. Lyanna gurgled and clapped her tiny hands, delighted to be in her father's arms.
I feel like the luckiest man alive already,
Jon said quietly, so that only his family could hear. He tickled Lyanna, getting a giggle in return, then kissed her cheek to her greatest amusement. She bumped her face against his cheek in return, her own version of a kiss, as Jon chuckled.
I'll take her if you don't mind, Daenerys,
Ned said eagerly. Lyanna squealed, turning around at the voice and clumsily throwing herself forward to reach her grandfather. Laughing, Jon held her back and carefully passed her over to his father. Joining her husband's laughter, Daenerys reached for the little length of blue silk wrapped around her daughter's wrist like a bracelet, and unwrapped it. Jon raised his wrist so Dany could wrap the favour there, and by now there were several loud "Awws" to be heard. He kissed the back of Dany's hand, patted Leah's head one last time, and turned around to the sparring area.
Sir Barristan was smiling, looking at the little girl. That is an unfair advantage you have there, my lord, he said, though Jon knew it was good-naturedly. You fight with the favour of the loveliest girl in the 7 kingdoms.
People are anxious, my kind knights, Barristan said, acting as a referee.
You're right, uncle. Let's begin, shall we?
Both Jon and Sir Barristan were wearing simple boiled leather armour, neither having expected to need heavier protection of plate. Their swords were, obviously, blunted tawny swords. They took their positions, and Benjen allowed the start of the match. They circled each other, measuring their opponent, neither willing to start. Finally, Jon lost his patience and attacked. Sir Barristan successfully parried, and they were locked in a clash of swords for a moment, until the Kingsguard managed to step back. He was the one who attacked this time, and though he had at least half a century behind him, Jon was not finding this an easy match. Old he might be, but Sir Barristan was showing why he had acquired a place in the highest martial order of the realm. Every attack was followed by a defence, and every inch of ground he took, Jon found himself quickly losing. He could see Sir Barristan was tiring, but that was an unfair advantage, and it served nothing in the end. In a complicated trance of swords, both Jon and Sir Barristan were struck, and the end of the match ended in a tie. The elder knight only laughed. You make your family proud, Lord Starling, the knight said, and you are true to your blood. Jon bowed his head. The spectators were excitedly gossiping now, and Jon knew Maester Walken would be crazy with the amount of ravens people requested to borrow. Would you like another match to clear up this tie? Benjen said with a large smile on his face. No, thank you, uncle. That's the answer to a question I am fine with not having answered. The 3 of them only laughed as Sir Loras approached. Kind sirs, Lord Stark, I've been sent by the emissaries of the betting pool. Sir Barristan rolled his eyes, but he had been to enough tourneys in his lifetime to know that betting was inherent to the human condition.
Who won the great prize?
After a short council, they decided that, since neither party won, the profit should go to the competitors.
Minus a bonus for each councillor, I'm sure,
the King's Guard said, eyeing the leather bag with displeasure as Sam joined them.
I have a better idea,
John said, taking the bag Loras was offering and throwing it to Sam, who clumsily caught it.
Lord Tarley, if you would be kind enough to send word to the village, tell the small folk their feast tonight is on me. Make sure the tavern gives them the good ale.
Sir Barristan smiled, nostalgia taking over, and bit back the comment itching at the back of his throat. He reached for his bag as well, passing it to Sam.
Now, if you'll excuse me, I must. John started. Lord Starling, since we won together,
Sir Barristan said with a smile,
I think we should both crown our queens of love and beauty.
John smiled and nodded, and the 5 men left the sparring area back to where the Starks and Starlings were. Isla, being Isla, had already made a small wreath of winter roses, which John took with a smile and placed on Lyanna's head, making her giggle from Ned's arms. Sir Barristan kindly accepted a fireflower Sir Loras procured and turned to Arya.
My good friend Syrio Farrell has interesting tales to tell me about you, young lady. Think of this as my request to spar some time in the future.
Arya took the flower with a smile. Thank you, Sir Barristan. I'll be honoured to.
It will be my honour to spar with a fierce she-wolf of Winterfell, he said with a small bow of his head. Lord Bran, your father tells me you've wanted to meet me for some time.
Bran was so excited his voice vanished, so he could only nod.
It is an honour, my lord, to have such an admirer.
With a last smile and a nod towards the giggling Lyanna, the Lord Commander of the Knights Guard left. The Lord Commander of the King's Guard left, the baby clapping her hands again, as if commanding the attention of her family to turn back to her, now that she was amidst so many people at once. Daenerys smiled as Sir Barristan joined her on the battlements overseeing the volcano and the narrow sea. Thank you for joining me, Sir Barristan.
Your wish is my command, my princess. What a wonderful view this is.
Dany sighed, looking out to the ocean. Those are dangerous words, sir.
These are dangerous times, your grace.
Jon won't rise up against Robert Baratheon, nor would I ask him. Not when it would risk our family.
I know that. I would never support a choice that risked any of you. I swore a vow to the throne, princess. A vow I now grudgingly uphold. But I know who my rightful ruler is.
I hear you have served my family well, Sir Barristan. You have spoken of my mother, but I would hear more, about all of them, if you would tell me.
It would be an honour and a pleasure, your grace. But I sense you have a specific question in mind.
Yes, I do, Dany smiled. I want to know about Jaime Lannister. I want to know why he shows no remorse for killing my father. And I don't blame him for it, but yet merely seeing me perturbs him due to my likeness to my mother. Sir Barristan took a deep breath, looking out over the ledge as a seagull dived to catch a fish on the calm waters.
Oh, but to destroy your view of the world, my queen. To tell you why Jaime Lannister feels like he failed your mother. To tell you that you, lovely and kind like her, are the product of violence. I wasn't Lord Commander then, Sir Barristan said finally. That honour belonged to Sir Gerald Hightower. Sir Jaime was only a lad then, barely 7 and 10, the youngest to be named.
Why did my father do it?
To have hostage against Lord Tywin. I told you, the king saw enemies everywhere. He wanted an advantage over Tywin, and better yet, that it would take his heir from him.
Tywin Lannister laughed last on that one.
He did indeed, your grace. Jaime Lannister was alone in the throne room with Aerys and his new hand, the pyromancer, when Tywin's men arrived at the gates. Whatever plan the king ordered executed is what drove Jaime to slay them. Lord Stark is the one who found him afterwards, sitting on the Iron Throne over the king's body. And they say the lad was speaking nonsense. All this I know from rumours, as Jaime was the only one left in King's Landing.
Rhaegar took the other 6 to the Trident? Daenerys asked with a frown.
No. Rhaegar took 3 of us with him, myself included. The other 3 were at the Tower of Joy.
Guarding the Lady Lyanna? Why? Why would she... Dany stopped. Why would the Prince of Dragonstone leave 3 of the best warriors in the kingdom to guard a woman no one really knew where she was, while half the realm rose in rebellion against the throne? Sir Barristan kept his eyes on the sea before him.
Your brother must have had his reasons.
Lord Stark told me she was not raped, so it is a logical conclusion that she wasn't taken. Everything I heard about her, how she was spirited and strong-willed, it makes sense that she wouldn't have been taken. But I think she would run away if she wanted to, the way the Northerners speak of her. Rhaegar named her the Queen of Love and Beauty too, and over his wife. So they...
These are dangerous words, Your Grace,
Sir Barristan said, turning to face her.
And dangerous times to break through.
There is more to the story, isn't there? There has to be. Otherwise it makes no sense.
History is always told by the victors, Princess. Robert Baratheon won, and in his eyes, Lyanna Stark loved him and would never run from him.
That can't be all. Lyanna's disappearance...
The major reason was the murder of Lord Rickard and Lord Brandon Stark, as well as Lord Elbert, who was the heir to the Vale. King Aerys murdered them cruelly and carelessly, and called for Jon Arryn to deliver Ned Stark and Robert Baratheon as well, to swear fealty and face justice. That's when they rose in rebellion, and not before. But your mother was a kind soul, Your Grace.
The knight cut in, regretting the direction he had let the conversation take.
She was the life of that castle. Like everyone there, he loved her. Maybe what he feels is regret he couldn't help her, like she helped everyone around her.
Daenerys saw that there was indeed more to the story, but his tone was final enough that she knew she would get no other answer on the subject. And Rhaegar? I don't believe the lies that he was a wicked man. Barristan smiled now, openly and nostalgically.
Rhaegar was a kind soul as well. He was no warrior, though when he started to train he was a menace with a sword in his hand, not to mention a very good jouster. No. Rhaegar didn't like war and combat. Rhaegar never liked killing. He loved singing.
Singing?
Oh yes, he loved to sing and play the harp. He would take his harp and go down to the city, and of course I had to go with him. He liked to walk among the people and sing to them.
He sang to the people? Dany asked, smiling.
Yes, Rhaegar would pick a spot on the Hook or on the Street of Sisters. Then he'd sing, just like any of the other minstrels.
And what did he do?
I made sure no one killed him, he chuckled, and I collected the money.
He smiled at Daenerys' shocked expression.
What? He liked to see how much he could make.
He was good?
Oh, he was very good.
And what did he do with the money? Dany asked curiously.
Well, one time he gave it to the next minstrel down the street. One time he gave it to an orphanage in Fleabottom. One time...
Sir Barristan chuckled again.
We got horribly drunk.
Dany smiled. A real person, she smiled. My brother was a real person, and he was kind and abhorred violence. He wasn't a monster. At that moment, she stopped hating her family. The Mad King was just one man. He was not the whole of House Targaryen. He is not the legacy of my family. Just one bad seed. I am not him. I will not let him be what our house is remembered for. Jon, who was holding Lyanna, Ned, Ella, Sansa, Arya, Bran, Robb, Marjorie, Benjen and Isla had left the training yard and gone into the gardens. They were now sitting by the fountain, and Lyanna was lying on a blanket on the cobblestones, showing off by turning over onto her back and belly. Isla had had a picnic served, and they were relaxing when Ghost, Greywind and Summer suddenly stopped their horsing around and stood to attention. The White Wolf looked at Rhaelys and Orys, and, seeming satisfied that the humans were safe enough, all 3 wolves ran out of the garden in a blur of movement. Lord Manderley came to the garden several moments later, looking very serious.
My lords, my ladies,
he said after the guards had allowed him passage to join the family.
Lord Stark, Lord Starling, my men took the initiative to send over some Some visitors that came to White Harbour. The boat just docked at the pier, and a boy was sent to warn me as the cart made its way up to the village."
Upset that the attention had been taken from her, Lyanna rolled to Sansa and started to climb on top of her aunt's leg. The girl smiled and picked up her niece, but cried out when the baby laid her weight on her shoulder. Ella came to pick up Lyanna, frowning, and Lord Manderley looked sharply at Sansa, narrowing his eyes in suspicion.
"I don't know what happened, Lord Stark," the Lord of White Harbour said, "but I think you should come with us. And I think we should keep this quiet."
Isla and Marjorie stayed behind with Lyanna and a moody Bran. Jon, Ned, Ella, Benjen, Robb, Sansa and Arya joined Lord Manderley, going back inside the castle. Sam joined them in the entrance hall. "I directed the cart to a storage barn, so no one would go snooping,"
he said. "What is so grave?"
Ned demanded.
"It's better if you see it, my lord,"
Lord Manderley insisted, and they all followed Sam's lead. The door to the barn was closed, and opened groaning and creaking. There were a handful of guards inside, both Starling and Manderley men, but they were staying well clear of the pack of direwolves, surrounding the cart in the middle of the room. Arya gasped. Next to Ghost stood Nymeria, a lot worse for wear, her fur matted and tangled and stained dark red with dried blood. She looked at Arya with cautious eyes, as if afraid of being on the receiving end of rocks again. But Arya had been heartbroken to do it the first time. She would never do it again. She only felt tears fall down her face as she ran to her companion, throwing her arms around her furry neck. Sansa pushed Robb out of the way and stepped up to the cart, feeling months of loneliness and misery drain out of her body. Lying in the middle, where Greywind was fussing over her, Lady raised her head, her tail wagging though she made no other move. Protruding from her left shoulder, there was still an arrow lodged. Sansa took her hand to her own shoulder, where the pain of the wound echoed. Ella looked at it unbelievingly for a moment, before she turned to Ned and whispered under her breath, "And you said you don't believe in magic." End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that one. Oh my god, I love that chapter. Ah, Sir Barristan, MVP! And being reminded of Rhaegar through Jon again. Even sharing the memory with Dany in a way that wouldn't link back to Jon. Love it. Absolutely love it. And also, Lady's alive! I love that! I hate that she died. I hate when innocent animals are killed. But because Sansa's not so alone and not so vulnerable anymore, it makes sense that she's alive in this story. Can you see why I love this story? It's so good. Also, can I just say, Barristan giving Arya that flower. I love it. Arya is so divorced from her femininity. But it's not a bad thing. She doesn't take joy from many feminine things. But still, I like that she's being appreciated more in this for things that aren't only about how boyish she is. Like Marjorie calling her beautiful. Ella defending her by saying that someone who called her horseface said that she was beautiful. And now this with Barristan, and him acknowledging her manly craft at the same time by saying that Syrio Forel has talked about Arya to him. I love that. Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment and subscribe and hit that bell to get notified whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, gals and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.